Right. I'm now going to tell you why I am going for a TKO in the first from Serra over GSP. I'm going to explain myself. I should explain myself first by examining the type of person that GSP is. Okay. George Saint-Pierre puts a lot of effort into training and working. This is obvious because he has managed to work his way up to title contention. He blew the title contention against Matt Hughes, started from the bottom, worked his way all the way back up to the top. I think that he does have a little bit of a habit when the end is in sight of perhaps rushing things. I am not certain how legitimate his groin pull injury was, just like I'm not sure how innocent his slipping on sweat accident was as well. He seems to have a great deal of trouble managing not to get hurt during training, so I assume he won't get hurt in the gym between here and the weekend, but you can never tell. I can't help thinking that when he beat BJ Penn and won the rights to fight Matt Hughes first, he thought that he would let BJ Penn go first because he beat BJ already, and if Penn managed to beat Hughes, who he had done already at that point in time, from GSP's perspective it would be easier to get to the title. He simply waits for Penn to beat Hughes, and then he beats Penn, and each of those stages would be a repeat, would be a legitimate aim. Of course, Penn didn't win. GSP did win when he then fought Matt Hughes again, but I believe that there's a great deal of expectation that goes along with being a champion, and I believe that GSP wasn't particularly happy with the way he won. I think he knew that Hughes chose to stand. I think he knew that he hadn't beaten Hughes in his area of strength, and I think he kind of felt not cheated, but he kind of felt like, you know, he did manage to do an illegal move as well, which doesn't help. But I think he felt rather like he now had a championship that he hadn't quite deserved, or hadn't quite. He was a little bit unhappy with the way he won. And I think then it goes to show that he suffers from a mental health problem. I think he suffers from anxiety to a fairly big degree. We saw the cracks when then he had to put off his match of fighting so-and-so, and he couldn't do a rematch with Hughes because there wasn't long enough for him to train, etc, etc. Started making excuses, and before you know it, Serra is in his face. And I think that the reason that Serra won last time was for two reasons. First, there was that mental angst GSP had with Hughes, which had affected him. Secondly, there's something that GSP does at the start of every match in the first minute that you have to avoid letting him do. He sets boundaries. People call it a feeling out phase. In GSP's sense, certainly I've seen him do it every single match I've ever watched him do. And what he's doing is he's setting boundaries. I think Serra, tired of that, went straight in, and the sudden shock of doing that, combined with the fact that GSP had sort of mental issues at the time, led to Serra gaining a victory. Yes, Serra then has the qualifications for beating GSP, but I would never hail Serra as being particularly a good fighter. He hasn't got the storied career of GSP. He hasn't got the storied career of Matt Hughes either. I don't like, and let's make this perfectly vocal now, I do not like Serra. I dislike the way I dislike everything about him. I think he's an absolute arse. I really do. I think that some of the things that he's said about other fighters is appalling. I shall never refer to him as a champion. He's a title holder, and not a particularly good one at that. I'm not convinced that his back injury was half as bad as he says. You know, he couldn't make the trip to fight Hughes. Surprisingly, after all that smack talk, isn't it? He couldn't go out and beat Hughes, and now he doesn't have to. It's funny that, isn't it? But he's perfectly up for going to a packed arena and making a lot of money by inviting people to come and watch the fights with him. The same way, GSP has avoided having a lot of his mental angst now that he's beaten Hughes a second time. Hughes and the angst that goes with that is out of the way, because GSP managed to beat him, and he managed to beat him on the ground. As far as GSP is concerned, that one is laid to rest. He need never be scared of Matt Hughes again. But I think he has avoided calling himself a champion, not because Serra has a belt, but because that brings expectations with it. And this leads me to think that he still has a mental problem with anxiety, and that the thing that Serra must count on, and the thing that I'm counting on when it comes to making my prediction that Serra will win, is that not only will GSP still need to do his feeling out phase, which we know that Serra can smash, but more importantly, that the mental anxiety facing GSP at this time is fighting in Canada, fighting in front of his home crowd, with all the expectation that goes along with that, and the fact that the UFC have first gone there. You know, I don't see GSP as being the future of the division. I see that as being John Fitch when he gets that far. I see that whether Matt Serra wins or loses, his next fight will probably be against Hughes. If he wins, I believe that they will put Hughes in a title contest if Hughes wants that. I think they'll do that because it's a big draw. GSP, whilst he's lovely, I mean, he's all right, and he tries really hard, and I've been very harsh on him. But you know, he has some weaknesses. I would never buy into the propaganda that you are being fed by people like Joe Rogan, that he's hugely classy. I mean, I think he's okay, but I don't think that there is any, nobody has given me any particular reason why, other than the fact that GSP is being made a poster boy. And with that said, I shall check the time before I speak about Franklin, because if there's not enough time, I'll have to do another video. Oh, I think there is enough time. Exciting. Which means I can continue now. So, with that said, Matt Serra over GSP, TKO in the first. Having said that, if Matt Serra doesn't do it straight away, GSP will win. So, you know, it's a one-shot hope for Matt Serra. If, of course, he doesn't get injured between now and then. Franklin versus Travis Lutter. Okay, interestingly enough, when Travis Lutter went to fight in Tough, the reward would have been to fight the champion, who at that time was Franklin. A similar situation happened with Matt Serra, who wanted to fight Hughes, of course, only to find that when he got there, Hughes had passed on to the belt to GSP. So finally, we're seeing a Franklin versus Travis Lutter match, which should have happened before, just like we've seen just like we will see a Matt Serra and Matt Hughes thing, I think still. Travis Lutter, an armbar specialist. They both lost to Silva, but Travis has only fought once in 2007. That's all. There's 13 months since he last fought, which will not help him. And we assume that he makes weight in order for this fight to happen. Franklin also likes, when he's on the ground, to use the armbar. I think it will be a TKO by Franklin over Travis Lutter in the third. I could see it going decision and Franklin winning, but I would like Franklin to finish this fight. However, what would make me just laugh would be an armbar win by Franklin over Lutter, which is not hard to believe if you look at his record. So my official one will be TKO in the third by Franklin over Travis Lutter. All right.